Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of William Thompson, honorary chair of our selection committee, and myself and our committee and all the representatives of Carnegie organizations, I welcome you. Today is a day of celebration, and we're delighted you're here. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Tom Brokaw. Tom Brokaw represents the best of America. He comes from the American hinterland, South Dakota. Has proven that if you can make it in South Dakota, you can make it anywhere. Tom took New York City by storm, not to mention our nation and the world. He's a man of impeccable character, integrity, great learning, a best-selling author, a celebrated broadcaster who served as anchor and managing editor of NBC Nightly News with Tom Brokaw from 1983 to 2004, and the winner of almost every journalistic award that can be bestowed upon an individual. He's also perhaps the most dedicated witness for the greatest generation, those Americans who fought so valiantly and selflessly for the future of the United States and the world during World War II. I take great pride in having Tom Brokaw as my friend, and on behalf of all of us, I thank him for his generosity in giving us his time today and gracing us with his presence as Master of Ceremonies for the 2007 Carnegie Medal of Philanthropy Award ceremony. I also want to tell you that Tom Brokaw's book, new book, will be another bestseller, another blockbuster, as we call it in the United States. It's called Boom, Voices of the 60s, Lessons for Today. Ladies and gentlemen, the great Tom Brokaw.
Thank you to my friend Barton Gregorian. I think that his remarks need just a little bit of context. First of all, when he asked if I would be here today, and I was at an earlier ceremony, so I was very impressed with this, I said, Barton, I'm greatly conflicted because my friend the Dalai Lama is being honored in Washington, D.C., and he said if I would appear there, he would promise me a great afterlife. And Barton said, you have no idea the kind of afterlife that I can arrange for you if you just come to Pittsburgh. I must say it's very impressive for those of us who come out here from New York to have a sense of public housing here in Pittsburgh. You do pretty well, I must say. And if I can just, although I've been gone from my home state for 45 years, they do think I'm going to move back any moment now, so I'm always compelled, when people describe it as the hinterland, if you cross the border from Minnesota or Iowa into South Dakota, or God help you if you go from North Dakota into South Dakota, you'll find yourself in the cultural universe of the world, and I want you to be aware of that. The thing that we share most of all with Pittsburgh are winters. I'm very happy to be here in part because I think that this ceremony celebrates the legacy of one of the great philanthropists that the world has ever known, and we are still harvesting the fruits of his philanthropy, Andrew Carnegie. We are living at a time when I don't think that we have a full realization of the magnitude of the wealth that is being generated even as we speak here today. Never have so many people accumulated such great wealth, and with great wealth, of course, comes great moral responsibility. Moreover, in these complex and challenging times in which we live on a smaller planet with so many more people and so many more needs, we recognize that not just great wealth, but the philanthropy that is within each of us will be a measure of our own time on this precious planet. These medals give us a chance to honor the role models and to say to generations coming along, this then is your legacy. This then is your responsibility. One of the earlier recipients, the man that I was pleased to introduce at the time when he received the award at the Public Library in New York, was Ted Turner. In his own inimitable way, Ted has said that he believes that there should be a Forbes 400 list for those who give away the most money, not those who accumulate the most money. He says his favorite cartoon was in the New Yorker. It showed a very small funeral motorcade, just a hearse and one car. And behind the one car were 3 armored cars. And the caption said simply, "Well, I guess he decided to take it with him." The people that we honor here today honor us with their enlightened generosity. And so it is only fitting that we should salute them on this occasion and every day. I'm pleased to be able to say that we're going to begin with a family that has been in the forefront of American philanthropy for more than a century. When I was a young correspondent in the 1960s covering the civil rights movement in the South, I would often go to the black churches in the rural parts of Alabama and Georgia and Mississippi. And one Sunday morning, I was in a black church in rural Alabama in a very poor neighborhood. There was a stunningly effective young preacher there, and when it came time for the offertory, he said, "I know it's hard for you, but let's have a little of that quiet money here today if we can." Folding money. And the wrinkled dollar bills came out of the pockets of the sharecroppers. At the other end of the spectrum of quiet money is the Mellon family. Quiet, dignified, and so important to the welfare of all of us and giving us the underpinning in the arts, life sciences, conservation, and health. There would not be a National Gallery in Washington, D.C., that great collection of art that we should all treasure, or a National Portrait Gallery, without the vision and the generosity of Andrew Mellon. I'm very pleased then to call to the podium to present to the Powell family the Carnegie Medal for Philanthropy, Earl Powell. Mr. Powell.
It is my great pleasure today to present the Carnegie Medal of Philanthropy to the Mellon family. This is a very personal and meaningful award for me. The organization that I work for, the National Gallery of Art in Washington, D.C., owes its very existence to the vision and philanthropy of the Mellon family, and to Andrew and Paul Mellon in particular. Those of you in the audience who study or teach at Carnegie Mellon University, including its business school, founded by William Larimer Mellon, or its computer science department, launched with support from Richard King Mellon, can say the same thing. Earlier today, many of us enjoyed lunch in the Carnegie Museums, which contain a beautiful gallery made possible by the family of Sarah Mellon Scaife. And the list goes on and on. There are too many organizations created or funded by the Mellon family to name here, and too many Mellons in the audience today to recognize them all by name. It is fitting that the Carnegie Medal of Philanthropy be awarded to the Mellon family here in Pittsburgh, since that is where the family made its fortune and where it gave and continues to give much of it away. But it is worth noting that it is also a coincidence. The Mellon family's commitment is a truly national and international in scope. It is impossible to reflect upon the great philanthropists of the 20th and 21st centuries without thinking about the Mellons, and for that reason, this is a national and international award, in addition to being a Pittsburgh one. Before I have the honor of introducing Jay Mellon, who was nominated by his cousins to accept this award on behalf of the Mellon family, let us take a minute and hear from Patrick Noonan, founder and chairman emeritus of the Conservation Fund, for some personal impressions of the impact that Mellon Philanthropy has made.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This year marks the 60th anniversary of the founding of the Richard King Mellon Foundation. Founded in 1947 by General Richard King Mellon and his wife Constance, who became its first chairperson. the foundation has been a force for economic growth and development here in the greater Pittsburgh community and throughout the region. Their long-term commitment in the region now exceeds over $500 million, and they have been a generous supporter of medicine, education, and social services. Yet it is their land conservation legacy that sets this foundation apart from all other in America. And just as great works of art have inspired our nation and our people, so too have our great national parks, national refuges, and forests, for they too are emblematic of this great land we call America. The Carnegie Medal of Philanthropy recognizes and celebrates this, the most significant land conservation program in the history of our nation. In the mid-1970s, the foundation, led by Richard and Prosser Mellon, launched a distinctive program to protect the very best of our nation's natural and historic heritage. Consider the defining aspects of their program: its reach. The goal of the American Land Conservation Program was unprecedented, to benefit every state in the Union from sea to shining sea, by setting aside the very best in every state of the nation's outdoor heritage. Its magnitude: today, the Foundation's gifts have conserved over 3.5 million acres of endangered and historically significant lands. They have provided new national parks, entire wildlife refuges, state forests, and open lands across our great landscape. And they have dedicated those lands to the public good. They are now set aside in perpetuity for future generations to behold, to enjoy, and to treasure. In financial terms, more than $650 million in conservation contributions since 1947, their founding, is remarkable. Yet the real worth to Americans and benefit to future generations is priceless. My friends, we gather here in Pittsburgh, a city renowned for its philanthropic spirit, to thank a leading American philanthropy who for now 3 generations of trustees has been a leader in the American conservation movement and serves as an inspiration for others to follow. Their vision has challenged the American conservation movement to think boldly and to act courageously. Their generosity has led the way for a new generation of citizens and conservation professionals to go forth and save the best of this great land we call America. On behalf of a grateful nation, now and for future generations to follow, we thank you.
James R. Mellon II, in recognition of your family's outstanding leadership in so many fields, from the arts and education to land conservation and science, of its extraordinary commitment not only to Pittsburgh, but to what is truly great and deserving throughout the United States, and of its willingness to perpetuate these values in each succeeding generation, it is my pleasure to present the Mellon family with the 2007 Carnegie Medal of Philanthropy.
First, a word about Andrew Carnegie, who was a loyal friend to 2 generations of the Mellon family. With all the Carnegie institutions represented here, and with 4 Carnegie descendants in attendance, the presence of the great and good man in these halls is almost tangible. When I've concluded these remarks, I'm going to present this little gift here to our host, the president of Carnegie Mellon University, Dr. Jared Cohen, because he expressed an interest in it. This is the only known recording of Andrew Carnegie's voice. In 1914, when Carnegie was getting along in years, his friends hustled him down to a sound studio in New York and made him read his famous essay entitled The Gospel of Wealth. It is there that we read the unsettling words for which Carnegie will always be remembered and which President Gregorian has already advised you of. And I quote, "The man who dies rich dies disgraced." That may not be music to the ears of everyone in this room, but it does point to an important truth about Carnegie. He was the first philanthropist to think deeply and philosophically about the ethics and the usefulness of giving money away. And he performed a thought-provoking service when he listed the different kinds of philanthropy in a descending order, according to their actual benefit to mankind. At the top of his list, he placed universities and libraries, which is to say that Carnegie viewed education as the supreme philanthropy. He wanted to help people to help themselves, and he found himself entirely in accord with the venerable Confucian adage, which wisely proclaims, "Give a man a fish, and you feed him for one day. Teach a man to fish, and you feed him for the rest of his life." That, in a nutshell, was Carnegie's view. And those of us who have engaged in philanthropic activities have come to recognize the enduring wisdom that it encapsulates. Now a word about the Mellons. We are, of course, profoundly honored by the bestowal of the Carnegie Medal for Philanthropy on our family and on the foundations which were funded with our fortune. For that honor, we thank the Carnegie institutions with all our hearts. But if the truth must be told, I feel that no individual can claim too much credit for having donated surplus wealth to worthy causes. Is there anything better that a well-intentioned thinking person can do with money that he doesn't really need? On the other hand, the trustees and officers of our foundations do indeed deserve a brimming measure of credit for the meticulous care with which they have chosen their grants, the thoroughness with which they have monitored those grants, and above all for the frequency with which the said grants have fulfilled, if not exceeded, expectations. You know, there's a delightful continuity in the philanthropic endeavors of our family. General Richard Mellon and his cousin Paul Mellon have taken their long leaves, as the saying goes, but their guiding influence, and indeed their personalities, are still clearly reflected in the objectives of the two mighty foundations that they established. General Mellon, whom I remember well, was first and foremost an unswervingly loyal Pittsburgher, and the foundation which bears his name continues to concentrate its giving right here in Pittsburgh and in western Pennsylvania. The general was an accomplished rider who loved to gallop after foxes in a scarlet coat, who loved to shoot and to fish. He adored the harmlessly predatory sports that were the delight of our Scotch-Irish landlords in the Old World. And from the practice of these outdoor activities came the general's love of nature and his commitment to conservation and to the environment. He communicated that commitment to his children and grandchildren and to his foundation, which in the 50 years of its existence directed 46% of its giving toward environmental causes. And what particularly impresses me is that in a day when Americans were not yet aroused about our threatened environment, the Richard King Mellon Foundation was already taking giant steps to protect, preserve, and defend the environment. Similarly, in its giving pattern, the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation still mirrors the objectives of its founder, Paul Mellon. Paul was half British and spent most of his mature life in Virginia, Washington, New York, and in the Old World. As a result, the focus of the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation has not been primarily on Pennsylvania, but on the entire country and indeed the world. Paul saw in the humanities an impoverished and neglected sphere of philanthropy. And here's a fact I would invite you all to consider. The A.W. Mellon Foundation donates fully twice as much money to the humanities as the U.S. government does via its endowment for the humanities. Now that's quite an amazing statistic. And speaking only for myself, I will say here that it throws additional light on the rather skewed priorities of the present government. We all know that in philanthropy, magnanimous intentions are required, but we also know that they are never enough. For without detailed practical knowledge and business ability reinforced by common sense, foundation grants become nightmares in giving. Maybe you would agree with me that it's time for someone to write a book on spectacularly successful philanthropic initiatives. I mean, instances where a very small grant produced truly phenomenal results. I think it would make a thrilling read. But unfortunately, there's another book that should also be written. It would highlight the most lamentable philanthropic catastrophes, where a huge foundation grant resulted in only a puddle of misspent wealth. I'm convinced that to read these two books in tandem would be an edifying experience for anyone who intends to engage in foundation work. Ladies and gentlemen of the Carnegie institutions, the medal which you have conferred on our family holds us Mellons to an extremely high standard. We are really going to have to behave ourselves. But I cannot doubt that our two leading foundations will continue to perform their functions with the exemplary professionalism for which they have always been known, and that they will so conduct themselves that you will never, I say never, have cause to regret the honor that you have conferred on us so graciously today. I will close by expressing my special gratitude to the luminaries whose presence here has vastly enriched this occasion. In no particular order, they would include President Varjan Gregorian of the Carnegie Corporation of New York, President Don Randall of the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation, my cousin Prosser Mellon, president of the Richard King Mellon Foundation, Director Earl Powell of the National Gallery of Art, President Jared Cohen of Carnegie Mellon University, and the great-grandson of Carnegie himself, William Thompson. And I thank you all for coming.
That's a combination I like, quiet money and a robust attitude. Thank you, Mr. Mellon. The next recipients represent a family from an ancient culture and a young nation, the Tata family of India. India, obviously, is one of the most exciting places in the world today, and it will be for the remainder of the century and well beyond. The kind of wealth that is being created there and the social consciousness, of course, stems almost directly from families such as the Tata family. For more than 100 years, this family, which is engaged in a variety of enterprises, has been a role model for young Indian entrepreneurs coming up in terms of developing an idea of social justice for that highly educated and very populated country. Now, 8 to 14% of the profit annually from the Tata Industries goes to philanthropic endeavors. They are defining a corporate social responsibility in a rapidly emerging nation. And to present the award to them today, to give you a sense of the esteem with which the Tata family is held in India is the former President of India, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, who is himself a distinguished scientist and a great advocate for the place of technology in the developing world. Dr. Kalam.
I am very happy that Tata family is honored with Carnegie Mellon of Philanthropy today. My greetings to Tata family, particularly to Tata Ratan Tata for receiving the award on behalf of Tata family. The occasion reminds me the advice given to Gandhiji when he was 9 years old by his mother. Gandhiji's mother said, "Son, in your entire lifetime, if you can save or better someone's life, your birth as a human being and your life is a success. You have the blessing of the Almighty God." This is what mother said. The advice has made a deep impact in the mind of Gandhiji, which made him to work with the humanity throughout his life. In the same way, I can see the reflections in the Carnegie family and the Tata family in their philanthropic actions, which has made an impact in the lives of many societies in the world. On this occasion, I am reminded of several events, but I would like to share a few of the visionary action by the Tata family. Jamsetji N. Tata is a pioneer in establishing a steel manufacturing in India. Of course, the Pittsburgh played a very important role in that area. With the advice of Swami Vivekananda, he also had the indications and information in the material research is very important, and steel making in India resulted in birth of an Indian Institute of Science. The next important event, which I am remembering, was how the great visionary J.R.D. Tata contributed for the growth of aeronautics in India. J.R.D. Tata was the first visionary leader who started aviation on October 15, 1932. The first flight of Indian civil aviation took place from Karachi to Ahmedabad and to Bombay. His efforts led to the birth of Air India in 1945. And let us recall his famous word, "With Air India, I was creating something new, something entirely new. Therefore, I was creating history in a small way, so did not have to have the responsibility for the past." Today, the Ratan Tata has brought a brand
heart. We're grateful. His father, Jack, used to describe the small circle of his friends who shared his vision for using the arts as economic development as his band of dreamers. And that's how I see this family. Dreamers, yes, but also doers, with a passion for change stretching across generations. My late husband, John's great-grandfather, old H.J., whom I would love to have met, was fond of describing his mission: to do a common thing uncommonly well. How simple, how genuine. 100 years ago, when tainted food products were the norm, H.J. sold his horseradish over 100 years ago, it was in the 60s, 1860s, in clear glass at age 17, which he hidden in the basement of his house. His mother protected him. And he started to use clear glass to make horseradish, which you know was brown, very easily. And he wanted to show the quality of the product. And he thought that quality and integrity of his product were paramount to being successful. He's an honest man. I sometimes wonder if he were a student today, if he would be doing green chemistry at CMU with Terry Collins or someone like that, because it was about doing the right thing in an innovative way. Wonderful. At a time when exploiting workers was commonplace, was what the way the marketplace worked, the way the workplace worked, he felt obligated to treat his workers with dignity, so much so that his son was inspired to memorialize his mother, Sarah Hines, with a home which is possibly the nation's oldest first day care. It still stands, beautiful building, the Sarah Hines House, fully functioning, indoor swimming pool, tennis courts, basketball, taking care of kids in the north side, which was near the old Heinz company, to take care of all those Polish, German, and other kids and help them improve their lot. He believed in sharing prosperity, not holding it, maybe in a patriarchal way, but that's the way he could do it. A founder of the World Sunday School movement and a man of deep faith in humanity, he believed in high aspirations and uncompromising hard work. Those values made his business thrive and set the tone for his family's philanthropy. For them, philanthropy was not just an act of giving something away, rather, it was an act of making something happen. With the right of mixed sharp thinking, high ideals, and hard work, philanthropy was an opportunity to invest in change and to transform the common into the extraordinary. That was the spirit of philanthropy created here in Pittsburgh. The philanthropic legacies of Carnegie, of Mellon, Heinz, and so many others today, our contemporaries in this town, were born of different men and in different ways. But what they shared and what the institutions named after them still share is a practical idealism that refuses to accept the world as it is and seeks to shape a world that could and should be. The decisions of the past should not limit the choices we make today to create that world, and philanthropy gives us a means of stepping beyond our limitations to create new possibilities. It is so fitting that we share this honor today with two men whose philanthropy embodies that same spirit, my friend Eli Broad and Mr. Tata of India. The great idea born here so many years ago is more relevant than ever to a world struggling toward a saner, healthier, and more sustainable future, one in which we can truly claim to have justice and opportunity for all. Thank you for honoring the Heinz family's role in carrying that noble ideal forward, and thank you so much for everything.
Thank you, Teresa. Our next honoree comes from the West, from the American West, that exciting place called California, which is where I first got to know Eli Broad. He has been one of the most successful home builders in the history of this country, in the history of civilization, for that matter. He's accumulated great wealth, and he's now using it in wise and directed ways. With his wife Edith, they have a $2.5 billion foundation. They are great patrons of the arts in Southern California, but Eli has become one of the seminal voices in this country in education reform. It has become a full-time occupation for him, and to present the award to him in the absence of David Baltimore, a Nobel laureate, is that great scientist, Barton Gregorian. Barton.
Thank you. Before I present Eli Broad, I'd like us to give a hand to Edith, his wife, who's done so much. Where is she? She's been both partner and source of inspiration for Eli's giving. Now, usually, as you know, I have surprises. And before I do anything, I like you to hear from somebody who knows a little bit about Eli Broad, who happens to be William Jefferson Clinton, President of the United States in the past. He cannot be here, but he sent this tribute to Eli Broad.
I regret that I can't be there in person to congratulate my good friend Eli Broad, whom I admire for his tremendous accomplishments and for the ongoing global impact of his commitment to philanthropy. Today, he and his wife Edie are devoted to philanthropy as founders of the Broad Foundation, which focuses on entrepreneurship for the public good in education, scientific and medical research, and the arts. As a resident of New York and someone who has an office in New York City, I'm particularly glad that Eli Broad and the Broad Foundation recently honored the New York City school system with the largest share of the $1 million Broad Prize for Public Education. He's made available $500,000 in college scholarships for graduating high school seniors. I join you today also in honoring the Hines family, the Mellon family, and the Tata family for their terrific philanthropic efforts. Congratulations to the Carnegie Corporation of New York and all the Carnegie organizations for carrying on the legacy of one of history's greatest philanthropists, Andrew Carnegie. How great it is that Pittsburgh, one of America's most livable and generous cities, could host this event for 2007. Andrew Carnegie is surely smiling down on you today. So congratulations again to Eli and to all the other medalists.
Now, I'm going to be Dr. Baltimore with an accent. Eli Broad is a rare bird. I've known him for only the last 10 years when he was winding up the involvement that made him his fortune. So I have a pure knowledge of him as a philanthropist. Self-made people like Eli often approach philanthropy idiosyncratically, and Eli fits the mold. He has passions, and he has his own slant on those passions. For instance, he is a committed collector of art, but focuses on in-depth collection of just those artists he admires. And his collecting is not only for his pleasure. He runs a lending service to the museums so that his collection can be widely seen. A second passion is education. Whereas others focus on funding schools or students, Eli supports the training for managers, believing that better superintendents and principals will lead to better schools. A third passion of his is Los Angeles. Here he's trying to make his adopted city a less anonymous, more rewarding place. He's done so much for the city, it's hard to know where to start, but his crowning achievement was getting Frank Gehry's Disney Hall built. And his latest passion is medical research. Here, aside from involvements in supporting stem cell research, he has chosen to fund the Broad Institute in Cambridge, Massachusetts, making a single large bet on a brilliant director to create a unique institution. And the Broad Institute is all he could have hoped to create. Eli does all of this personally. You get not only his money, but also a piece of the man. Luckily, he's doing too much to be a micromanager, but very little escapes his notice. Eli is Mr. Los Angeles. He's a great citizen of America, supporting many aspects of his life. He does all of his in partnership with his caring and supportive wife, Edie. It is hard to imagine any individual more worthy of the Carnegie Medal of Philanthropy, David Baltimore. Now I have to read his citation. For Eli Broad, for your unwavering commitment to improving public education in grades K through 12, for advancing innovative scientific and medical research, including biomedical and stem cell research, and for fostering public appreciation for contemporary art through a lending library of more than 1,200 artworks, loaned to more than 400 museums and university galleries worldwide. It is my honor to present you with the 2007 Carnegie Medal of Philanthropy. And I like to also stress that as being true and verify for it personally, all the statements made by Dr. Lewis.
I'm deeply honored to receive the Carnegie Medal. I'd like to thank David Baltimore in absentia, Vartan Gregorian, President Clinton for their generous remarks. And to the members of the Carnegie jury, I'm humbled by this recognition. It is indeed a great honor to follow such generous philanthropists as the Heinz family, the Mellon family, the Tata family, in accepting this 2007 Andrew Carnegie Medal of Philanthropy. You've already heard from several people that my wife Edie, of 53 years, shares my passion for giving back. This award holds special meaning for me. In recent years, I'm often asked, who's a person you've most admired? And my answer is always the same, Andrew Carnegie. His business success was far surpassed by his philanthropic impact. He leveraged his material wealth with a greater belief that creating institutions for the public good would yield multiple returns across generations and continents. Quite simply, he created a legacy that has changed the world and improved the lives of millions. I can think of no greater example of philanthropy. This country's been good to me and my family. And when my business career culminated with the sale of Sun America to AIG, Edie and I then realized we had more money than our children would ever need, or more than we'd certainly need. We'd been blessed with, not only with wealth, but also with a more valuable opportunity, even a responsibility to make a difference and give back. So at the age of 66, I started a new career. I remember reading a quote that said, "He who gives while he lives also knows where it goes." That was someone other than Andrew Carnegie, by the way. And I knew that I wanted to make an impact during my lifetime. Each of today's medal recipients has chosen the areas where they believe they can make the greatest impact. For our family, we believe that the greatest needs are to improve urban public education in America, to improve the human condition through scientific and medical research, and to increase public appreciation for the arts. I find great satisfaction in changing the status quo for the better, or in creating institutions that didn't exist before. And I'm sure that Andrew Carnegie did as well. I can honestly tell all of you that I'm not only working harder than when I ran a Fortune 500 company, but I'm getting far more satisfaction out of what I'm doing now than when I was in the world of commerce. We're very proud to follow in the footsteps of a man whose time, talent, and treasure has not only made a difference, but has set an example for me and for generations to come. Thank you.
While all the recipients go on stage, could we ask family members of the recipients to stand so that we can recognize them as well? The Mellon family, the Top family, if there are others here. Edith. And as they gather there, I'd like you to just remember one small example of the vision and the generosity of Andrew Carnegie. I grew up in the Great Plains in working class communities where the center of gravity was a Carnegie Library, small brick building that contained a treasure, the treasure of books and literature. And as I sat on this stage today in my privileged position, I thought, how many American doctors and scientists and educators and lawyers and industrialists came out of those libraries. That was the inspiration for them. It gave them the first step. It was one more example of the fruits of philanthropy that are not always so evident to us. We can't all be Andrew Carnegie. We can't all be the Hines family or the Eli Broad family, the Tata family, or the Mellons. But we can, in our own way, find ways to be philanthropists as well. If I can, just one small current example. I have friends in the American West who are very concerned about the environment. They don't have great wealth. They have small businesses, most of them. They're fishing guides and sporting goods stores and outfitters. They have formed something called 1% to Save the Planet, and they're giving 1% of their annual sales to environmental activists in the West. Now more than ever, it's a time not just to be generous, but to be wise. And a final round of applause to these generous and very wise people.
Let's give a hand also to Tom Brokaw, our Master of Ceremony. To our hosts,